A 3-year-old survives H1N1 in an ICU stay, but a hospital IV burn changes his hand forever. Years later, the real question isn't medical, it's psychological. Is this a permanent disability or a permanent identity built around an injury? Today I'm going to break down a real case and what employers and risk leaders need to understand about how long-term disability narratives evolve over time. I'm Dr. Leslie Cadet, an occupational medicine physician and the founder of Ascend Occupational Medicine Consulting. At Ascend, we help self-insured employers lower their workers' compensation costs by providing medical oversight that works. And in this case, we're illustrating something we see more often than people realize. Sometimes the most difficult part of a catastrophic injury isn't the injury itself, it's what happens years later. To understand why, you have to start at the beginning. This child was born prematurely at 31 weeks. His early life was difficult. He had pneumonia as a newborn. He had difficulties feeding. Frequent medical care was the norm. And then at age 3, he developed H1N1 influenza. It quickly became severe pneumonia. He was admitted to the pediatric ICU. He required intubation, high-frequency ventilation, antivirals, antibiotics, sedation, and blood pressure support. He was critically ill, but he survived. The event that changed his life wasn't the infection, it was something that happened during the treatment. During that ICU stay, an IV line in his left wrist infiltrated. So instead of his medications flowing through his vein into the body, the medications went into the surrounding flesh or tissue. Now in this instance, potassium-containing fluids are what were inside of the IV, and they leaked into the surrounding tissue or flesh. So fluids that contain potassium can cause the tissue to die when they're directly introduced into the tissue. So the result was devastating. He had a 3rd-degree burn, which means it goes through the skin, the subcutaneous muscle, all the way down to the muscle. Emergency surgical debridement was the treatment where they remove all of the dead flesh. He had a skin graft, where they take skin from one part of the body and put it on the wrist. He had a pressure injury on the back of his scalp because he was sedated for so long, laying in his hospital bed. The burn damaged the nerves in his wrist, so he developed muscle loss in the hand, weakness, he lost sensation in the hand. Eventually, he shifted from being left-hand dominant to right-hand dominant. So let's be clear, this was real, this was serious, and it was a preventable medical injury layered on top of a life-threatening illness. But this is where the story takes a turn that many people don't expect. Over time, nerve studies began to show that the nerves in his wrist were growing back. 3 years after the incident, nerve signals were returning. His function was improving. Therapy continued for his hand and wrist. 5 years later, a doctor said, yes, he does have some permanent impairment. 3 years later, he had a functional capacity evaluation that said, yes, there is still some impairment in the hand, let's continue therapy. 3 years after that, a different functional capacity evaluator noted that there were some self-limiting behaviors and the potential for improved function was still there with rehab. And now I'm seeing him. And that 3-year-old is now a young man. He's never had a job. He doesn't drive. His parents still bathe him. And on exam, he's got no muscle loss in the hand, suggesting chronic disuse. There's no complete loss of function. He's got full strength. But the family narrative is powerful. He's disabled. He should never have to work. He deserves lifetime income. This is where medicine intersects with something much bigger, identity. So let me be clear about something. The injury was real, the burn was real, the nerve injury was real, but permanent disability and permanent dependency are not the same thing. You know, when I was a doctor in the Air Force, I treated military operators. We call them TACPs. Stands for Tactical Air Control Party. And these are special airmen. I mean, these guys jump out of airplanes. They engage in hand-to-hand combat. And one time, one of my TACPs dislocated his right shoulder repeatedly. He had multiple surgeries. He was in his late 30s. And I advised him that, it might be time to stop. And his answer to me was simple: no. I love my job. I want to do it as long as I can. And we've all seen people with amputations who work, drive, and raise families, which raises an uncomfortable question. What are we reinforcing? Is it recovery or an identity built around an injury? Because in disability medicine, something matters far more than most people realize, and that's mindset. Rehab is not just physical, it's psychological, it's social, it's cultural. So if the family system reinforces incapacity, function can plateau even when the body has healed. There's a biblical principle in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10. If a man will not work, he shall not eat. That doesn't mean we ignore true disability, but it does mean we distinguish between three different things: impairment, limitation, and learned helplessness. Those are not the same thing. And when employers, insurers, or systems support lifelong non-participation in work without objective evidence that the body cannot function, we unintentionally harm the very person we claim to help. So key takeaways for employers. Number one, focus on what the employee can still do, not just on what the injury report says they can't. Track whether the employee's functional abilities are improving over time rather than assuming early limitations are permanent. Number three, periodically request updated work capacity or functional ability reports before making long-term accommodation decisions. Number four, work closely with the treating provider and claims team to identify modified duty opportunities that will keep the employee engaged in work. Number five, encourage recovery plans that build independence and return to work readiness, not long-term inactivity. The most expensive claims aren't always the most medically severe. They're often the ones where recovery stops, not because the body can't improve, but because everyone assumes the employee cannot return to productive work. If this breakdown helped you understand how disability narratives evolve over time, like the video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment. I read all of the messages. If you're an employer or a risk leader and you want to learn how to identify these claims early, join our email list and register for our upcoming webinar, The 4 Claims No One Wants and How to Spot Them Early. And if you're tired of watching your claims spiral out of control, book a strategy call with us today. The link is in the description. Until next time, peace.